Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Aiman Akhtar. Thank you for joining this ZBrush live stream in the morning. I want to prep for just a minute, make sure everything's working all right. So just give me a few minutes, hang out, and I'm gonna double check the audio and all that good stuff.
People love superheroes, but if you knew half the stuff they get up to,
Got a boys trailer playing,
it's diabolical.
so that should be good there. Let's double check on ZBrush Live. So that should be good there. Sweet, I can hear myself. All right, pull this up over there so you guys can see what we'll be talking about today. Let's get some music going in the background. It's going to put on some ambient music in the background. Let me know if it gets too loud. And just give me one more minute. I'm going to set up a bunch of browsers and then we'll jump right into it. Hope everyone's having a good day today. Thank you for joining from all over the world, wherever you're tuning in from. I'm going to get set up on the chat as well, so you should be able to send any messages you have from, let's see, let me pull that up right now actually. Saying select all images with traffic lights. Why does it always do that kind of thing? All right, Mr. Nice Guy just got out of jury duty, so it's a good day so far. So I'm on this Restream chat app, so I should be able to see your messages, whether they're coming in from Twitch, YouTube, Facebook. We've got Crazy Jackass. I'm from Germany, the year 2021. Nice. Well, what do they say in 2021? Hopefully this will say Guten Tag. All right, just give me one more sec, and then we'll be up and running. Today we'll be talking about articulation, obviously, and I'm finally going to share my keying and articulation ZBrush Imm Brush that many people have been waiting for, and I've been too busy to be able to publish. But almost time. Where'd the music go? I think it's just so ambient that it's having a hard time even playing it. Oh yeah, that's super ambient. It's called Legacy Big giant circles. I like this service, Pretzel. It's like a radio that we can have going in the background, and all the music is royalty free, so you can stream with it. Okay, looks like I'm pretty much done setting up. So let's kick this off. Alright, cool. Lower the music down just a smidge. Check the Restreams chat. Okay, we got Tawheed Aslam from Pakistan. What's up, man? Thanks for joining. Sasha Lazeki, Schnell. I don't know what that means. I'm gonna have to Google Schnell. Alright, learning the anatomies to help me sculpt. Cool, so I have something that I may be able to help you out with, anatomy-wise. Peter Masek saying, do you have 2 3D printers? That's cool. Yeah, I've got a few that you may be able to see behind me. Let me pull this up a bit. Alright, cool. So, this is my first time streaming from my new office. We got some seed funding for Fungusaurs, and then we've expanded. So, you can take a look. It's not massive, but I've got my one big Raise 3D N2 Plus printer here, and the 2 Form 2 printers over there. Looking to get a Form 3 soon. Got the writer's table in the middle, or whatever we're going to use it for. And then we've got on the right-hand side, on the left hand, my left, your right, kind of like an expo table setup, just so we can get the inspiration we need as we work on stuff. So I'm excited to spend the next few months working on my own project. It's exciting. So let's get right into what we're going to be talking about today, and I'm going to just do a very brief intro for my usual kind of spiel, so you know who I am and what I'm about, and then we'll get into today's ZBrush stream. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, lower this pretzel volume just a smidge, 1%. Okay, my name is Aiman Akhtar. I'm a 3D artist out of Los Angeles, and I've been doing this for about a decade. Past 5 years in LA, been doing a lot of 3D printing. So large-scale sculpture, small-scale sculpture, costumes, VR to 3D print, 3D print prep. So you can see a bunch of that on aiman3d.com/print, and check out all sorts of stuff. The Corgi masks are a big favorite. And yeah, you can check out more of my work at aiman3d.com. Project right now is Fungusaurs. This is my own IP that I've been developing with my wife, Fa. And we've created a series of characters and did a Kickstarter and made our own mystery box toy line. So those are available online at fungusaurs.com. And we've got all these characters that we're now taking the ZBrush models, the sculpts I used to make the toys, and now turning them into augmented reality game models, so we can have the toys come to life in augmented reality. The shtick is basically, if you have the app, whichever toy you get, we can scan it just using the Euphoria kind of object tracking and scanning that you can get in your phones, and then that toy will be unlocked as a playable character in your game in augmented reality. So that's what we're developing right now, and you can follow more about Fungusaurs on Instagrams at Fungusaurs, because we'll be bouncing around all over the place. We were at Comic-Con in San Diego last week. We'll be at Lightbox Expo in September, and then in December we'll be in, what am I saying, December? In September, ZBrush Summit. I'll be there. So if you're coming, join in. I'll definitely be there. And then November we'll be in DesignerCon. And the thing next weekend is Jackalope Arts Fair in Pasadena. So if you're in LA, swing by. Okay. Got the Restream chat going. Tawheed Aslam, hope to get some tips on character anatomy. I will definitely do my best to do that today. Alright, so if you're interested in seeing any of my previous streams, you can go to Presenters with Pixelogic. So pixelogic.com, ZBrush Live Presenters. Scroll down and you see this beautiful gentleman right here in the blue. That's Mia. You can see some more of my work there. There's the Fungusaurs prototypes. a dress that I did for 3D World magazine, all 3D printed. Beautiful Jessica Drew Johnson modeling. And I've got all of these different characters that I've 3D print prototyped in my own company, 3D Smiths. All right. So like I said, if you want to see any of the previous streams, they're all saved here. So even this one, if you don't get a chance to watch it live, will be saved here. I've talked about some articulation stuff before, molding and casting, large-scale sculpture, wearables, just prototyping my own new fungusaurs and characters. This is going to be stream number 45, 46, 47. So yeah, that's there. Like I said, I'll be at the ZBrush Summit, so if you're interested and in LA, that you can make it, I believe, see, that is September 27th through the 29th. So please do come join and then hang out with me. All right, got the Twitch going. Beanlight Games saying so handsome. Oh, thank you so much. All right. Cool. So I'm watching, and if you guys want anything, let me know in the chat, and I will pop in and try to answer your questions ASAP. If you're interested in learning more in-depth 3D printing from me, I teach an online class at mold3dacademy.com. It's self-paced right now, so you can get it at a great deal, 3D printing for ZBrush artists. 8 lectures on how to sculpt for 3D print, toys, wearables, articulation, keying, slicing, all sorts of stuff. And I'll share this link in the Restream chat so you guys can get that. And what we're talking about today is what I can get you for even less than 200 bucks, basically for 10 bucks. Basically, I put up my articulation and keying Imm Brush on Gumroad. So I'll drop that link in the, let's see, where do I get the link? Copy URL. I'll drop the link for that in the Restream chat, and I'll talk about that brush today. So that's kind of what today's stream is dedicated to. I'll show you how to make your own Imm brushes and how I go about that process of creating a key in ZBrush, and then how to use that on a character. And this écorché model is included in the purchase, so you can practice your anatomy and slicing and keying using that simplified écorché model. So, Gumroad, let's see. Keys, articulation, brush, Imm Brush. It's right there. Double make sure you guys are getting that. It should say it right there, but I do not see it. Gumroad, keys and articulation, Imm Brush here. I don't think there is any chat on there. Look at this. It's like the freaking inception of the chats. All right, so what is this Imm Brush? What is an Imm Brush, and how do you use it in ZBrush? Let's jump into ZBrush, and then we'll talk about it. Let me pull up the chat on the other monitor so I can have that running. Did you folks on YouTube get the link? Because sometimes I can double check the Twitch and Facebook stuff, but not necessarily YouTube. So let me know if you guys got the Gumroad link on YouTube. And if not, I will jump in and create it. All right, so we got this fresh ZBrush scene. We've got a sphere in it. That's kind of how I start most of my ZBrush scenes, is just throw a sphere up at the top. That way, when I save the tool, it'll save that file right there. Okay, so you guys didn't get the link on YouTube. Let me see. All right. ZBrush Live YouTube. Let me pop on that right now. There we go. ZBrush Live YouTube. All right, sweet. Let me drop the link on there. Gumroad link to, there we go. ZBrush Live YouTube. All right, you hear a bit of double audio as I'm doing this on my other screen. ZBrush keys and articulation, Imm Brush. All right, so now if you look in the comments, it should be down in the comments because I just went to YouTube and typed it in. that just a little tad bigger so you can see me. Alright, so we've got the ZBrush scene. It's got just that sphere in it. That's how I start most of my scenes, because when I save the tool, under Tool, Save As, wherever you save it, that name that you put in the file name gets dropped right there on that first model. So that's how I start most of my scenes. And then I've got a bunch of stuff in here. So these are all the different types of keys I've got. This is a snap-in pin Boolean. Got a non-Boolean one as well. Snap-in pin free rotation. And if you Control-Shift-Click, I guess, can show you that these models are made up of two parts. There's the internal component and the external component. So the outer edge can be used for cutting, and the inner edge can be used for actually adding to your model. So you want to make sure that when you draw out with these brushes that they have both parts. Here's another snap-in pin. So you can see this one allows you to rotate full 360 degrees inside. This one is limited. So you can snap in, but you can't rotate. And you can see the part that's inside there. And these have all been tested by 3D printing. It may not work depending on the scale that you're 3D printing or the machine that you're using to 3D print, but this brush should give you a good way to just articulate and key your own models and then work from there. You could prototype. Got a tapered square key, got a tapered round key, got a tapered Boolean, and don't worry if I'm going through these a bit too fast. I'll go back in and I'll show you what these all do. There is a Hinge Boolean in here. So this is modeled based off of the videos I saw of Joseph Druss doing it, and I tried to copy it as best as I could. And in my testing, I made some slight tweaks and improvements so it works well for me. So this is a Hinge Boolean. That's just all made up of one piece. Also have a limited hinge joint, which is made up of several pieces, so you can create your own hinge around this piece. A ball joint, similar to that previous hinge joint, where you can build on top of this, just use the engineering on the inside. And then I've got a few different ball joint Boolean types. So this one, because articulation by its nature is destructive. You're ruining your model in order to make it move better. So this one is to let you cut out, an area and key it in. So it's basically acting as a snap-in pin and a cutter, and then this area is for the pin, and then the rest of it you'd sculpt in. This last one, which looks kind of like that thing from Rick and Morty. Does anyone know what that thing's called? It's like this weird looking thing in Rick and Morty where, I don't know, they don't really describe what it does. They just did multiple episodes on it. Plumbus, yes, there you go. Thank you, Lattice Tech. So this thing that looks kind of like part of a plumbus is also a ball joint cutter, and I'll show you how this works. This is a Boolean mesh that should just give you a ball joint that works right off the bat. Alright, so these are the parts that make up my Imm brush, and the way I create an Imm brush is pretty simple. I'll delete that first sphere because I don't want that as part of my brush. I'll turn everything on, and then I'll choose an angle. That angle is very important because that's going to determine how you draw these pieces out. So you want to face, in my case, I want to face this directly at the direction I'm looking. And then you can go under your brush palette and say create insert multi-mesh. If you just have one subtool, you can say create insert mesh, but since I've got a whole bunch of subtools, it's going to be create insert multi-mesh. Give that a sec. It's thinking about it. It's thinking about it. There it is. Okay, so there's all the Imm brushes. The brushes that make up my Imm brush, and now this is what I'll be sharing with you guys. So let's open up something new. Let's just say we'll go to a cube 3D and make it a poly mesh. So we're starting on a fresh, clean, edited cube. So this is a poly mesh cube, and I'll show you what happens when you draw a bunch of these out. For the sake of actually being able to demonstrate that it's keying stuff, I'll duplicate that cube and move it over. So now you see 2 cubes. Leaving a little gap in the middle just so you get it, and then we'll maybe add a little bit of color to it. That one can be slightly green, that one can be slightly yellow. So you can tell these are distinct models. And I'll show you how these work. So the first one is the snap-in pin Boolean. So you can basically draw it out in the direction you're looking. So if I want to come to the top, I can draw it out. And then I can move it in. Move it into my mesh, move it around. You can see transparent won't work yet because when you draw it out, it's part of your mesh. And what I want to do is once I draw it out using this Imm Brush, I want to say split unmask points, and now it's on its own layer. Now transparency should work and we can see what's going on. It wasn't perfectly flat when I drew it out. So I want to make sure it's flat. And this is version 1 of the brush. So if there's issues with it, let me know and I'll go and try to correct those issues. They should all be drawing flat out. And all you need to do to Boolean in ZBrush is to go to your transparency mode, not transparency mode, in your subtool palette, click on that little half moon icon. There you go. And now when you go to your render Booleans, live Boolean, turn that on, now you can see that that's you cutting out of our mesh. So what did that actually do? I'm going to go to Boolean, make Boolean Mesh. It's going to think about it for a second. And it's going to make me this mesh right here. Now if I say auto groups, it'll break them apart into multiple pieces, and now we can see what it did. So the snap-in pin Boolean brush creates this snap-in pin on the inside, as well as cuts out the negative on the outside. So in theory, you should be able to just select this and move it in and out, and it should pin in place. And so this we did with just 1 cube. Let's go back to that cubes mesh. I'll turn off the snap-in pin. Pin Boolean. And let's try doing the same thing, but with a snap-in pin kind of freestanding. So this I'm going to use to connect 2 separate cubes. Come over to this angle, and I'll draw it out. Not too worried about the way the normals are working. That's not really a problem. That just means I probably didn't have a texture or material on there when I made this brush. So same way, I'm just going to draw it on, presuming that it's going to cut into here. So you can see that. And I'm going to split unmask points again. So that's on its own layer. Now this is made up, like I said, of an internal component and an external component. So I'm going to click Auto Groups and Group Split. And that should give me the internal snap-in pin and the external cutter. And what I can do is duplicate my 1 cube, merge down, and now I've got this piece as part of my cube. Now you can see if I zoom in that there's a little bit of space, and we don't want that. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to delete this, and I'll show you how to draw it out properly so there's no space. What you want to do is adjust your brush depth. So under brush depth, you can change the slider. Is my head blocking that? It is, isn't it? So I've got the brush depth on my custom UI that I've built. And you guys can access it under brush and then depth right there. And then the deeper you push this in, the deeper your model's gonna, your Imm brush is gonna get buried into your mesh. So you can see when I do it like this, it's all the way in. It's like halfway into the model. Versus if I bring it up a little bit, then do it, it's a lot further out. So you can play with this brush depth setting. So I'll draw it out there. I'll do the same thing, split unmask points. I'll auto group it, group split. I'll duplicate that cube and I'll merge down. And so now I've got there my snap-in pin as part of that cube. I can even Dynamesh these pieces together. But you want to make sure when you Dynamesh you have enough resolution, because if you Dynamesh these at a very low resolution, it's not going to work. Make it 500. It's going to think about it for a second. There it is. All right. I can make sure the whole thing's the same color as well. And now on the other end, you can use this piece as a cutter out of the other cube. So you can cut that out. So I'll duplicate it, bring it up here. I'll use this one as a cutter. But before I do that, I want to actually, let's see, make sure they're both on. Turn off transparency mode, and there you can see it's being cut out. Now there's a few different ways you can do this. You can just use that make Boolean mesh option that I showed you before and append it back on. Or you can merge down and Dynamesh. So I'll show you both ways. Make Boolean mesh will make that Boolean mesh, and there it is on a separate subtool, and you can append that in. And this does work probably the best, but I'll show you both ways so you can understand. All right. There we go. Fill color and material so we could see that as one piece. And then there's the other piece. And the whole point is that that should snap in into there. So you can use snap-in pin joints for just about anything. They're a very common 3D printing articulation tool. This one is a snap-in pin, I believe, limited. So you can't rotate it all the way around. But basically, that's going to insert itself, lock into place. And let me show you what's going on the inside to allow it to lock into place. I'm going to Dynamesh this mesh. David Renasp is saying snapping with a satisfactory click, I'm sure. Maybe. All right. I'm going to hide half this mesh so you can see what's going on. And I'll turn on my double-sided. So the way this works is this pin, there's going to be a lot of that's what she said jokes in this stream, I'm pretty sure. But you insert, it's going to shove its way in there, and it's going to snap with a satisfactory click right there when it gets to the end. Went a bit far. But yeah, and it should hold in place. That ledge is enough to get it to stay in place. Now obviously if you yank really hard, it'll come right back out. And the whole idea is that these two ends, they can bend a little bit. They can flex. So when you insert them, they'll flex in. And then when you get to the end, they'll flex up. And then you pull them out, they'll flex in again. And then when you get out, they'll flex up again. So flex in, flex up, and then inserted, and then flex in, and then out, and then back to normal. So I showed you the Boolean method of creating that piece. The other method is to simply Dynamesh both of these pieces individually and then cut them in place. So what I'm going to do is, right now you can see that this mesh is a decimated mesh. And what I want to do is go to my Dynamesh, crank that up to like 400 or 500 for this scene scale. And now that's ready to be our cutter. So I'll say make that the cutter, group is Dynamesh sub. I've got that on my UI, but for you guys, I believe that's under, let me see if I can find it, probably under polygroups. So you go under polygroups, group is Dynamesh sub. And then this one does not need to be a polymesh sub, but it does need to be Dynamesh for this to work properly. So we'll also need to Dynamesh this. There we go. And now I'll just merge down and just Dynamesh like I normally would, and that piece that was a Dynamesh sub should get cut out of the other piece. And there we go, got cut out. So 2 ways to get to the same exact thing. This is Dynameshed mesh with the snap-in pin cutter taken out. Alright, so now you can see how the snap-in pin works. Merge that down. And I'll name that snap-in pin. So obviously the Boolean works faster, it's better. But in some cases you may not want to just cut your mesh like that. So snap-in pin Boolean may not be the answer you need. You may actually need to want to come in and set up your custom snap-in pins. I can think of several ways I've needed to do that several times. Alright, so what's next in the Imm Brush? We've got snap-in pin limited. Oh, so that one was a snap-in pin free rotation that goes all the way around. This one is a snap-in pin limited. Taking it out will be a hustle. Yeah, it might be. Let me show you how the snap-in pin limited works. So this one, I'll say snap-in pin FR for free rotation. That means it should be able to spin 360. Huh? Weird. Okay. I'm going to come to my snap-in pin limited. I'll come right to the center of the mesh and I'll draw it out. This one you can actually kind of see the direction you're drawing out, and you can hold shift as you're drawing it to make it go a certain direction. I'd already adjusted my brush depth, so I know there's no gap there now. And I'll go split unmask points, auto groups, group split, and I should be able to see there's the internal component and there's the external component. So I'll merge the internal component onto my upper mesh, merge down. We'll Dynamesh those pieces together. And then color fill object so we can see that it's one piece. And then I'll use the other piece as a Boolean cutter out of the other side. Now the tolerances in this brush have already been baked in, so you should just be able to insert and it should work. But if it doesn't, just come to this mesh right here, Dynamesh it, inflate it a little bit, so just go to deformation tab, inflate by 1 or 2, and that should give you enough tolerance. Tolerances really change depending on the scale you're printing, so it's hard to make it impossible, make it work. Mortar Caner is saying on Twitch you can place 2 pieces in a folder, make that the Boolean folder, so you can have the subtool inside the tool and then get an extra tool with the normal Boolean. That's a great idea. Yeah, folders in ZBrush, I have highly underutilized them, but they're very powerful. Alright, so I'm going to make this a Boolean cutter. There's my mesh that's going to get Boolean out of. I'll say Boolean, make Boolean mesh. It's going to pop it up there and I'll append that in. Toss these 2 pieces. There's my Boolean mesh for snap-in pin free rotation. And I'll color fill object so it's just one piece. Probably Dynamesh it as well, just so this stuff isn't happening. Alright. And this mesh, similar to the previous one, should just be able to flex, insert all the way, and then snap once it gets to the end. Now, what you'll notice is this one does not allow you to rotate. The previous one, see, obviously drew it pretty differently. All right, there we go. All right, so in this one, you've got in the hole for the Boolean outside, it's a full circle. So you should be able to rotate in every direction with that snap-in pin. However, this other one, the snap-in pin limited, is limited. You've got just the sides that are flattened. So you can only keep it in one direction. You cannot rotate all the way around. Mortar Canner saying no love for folders. No, I like folders. All right, I'll make a folder in here later just to organize these Booleans. All right. So we'll call this snap in pin, not free rotation. I'll say limited. Limited. All right, so I've showed you a few different brush elements. Let's move on from the snaps to the tapers. So the tapers are pretty straightforward. They are, you can draw the tapered round, split unmasked points, auto group, group split. There you've got the internal component and the external component. The internal you can merge down. And the external you can use as a cutter. So same thing as the previous pin. I'm just showing you, repeating the same things over and over so you get how this works. This is going to Boolean cut that out. And this isn't going to snap and stay in place. This is just going to rest on top. But that's sometimes all you need. All right, so I'm just going to go over to here, and I'm going to say make Boolean Mesh. And I'll append that in. Merge that down. And we'll call it tapered round. Delete that cutter, don't need that anymore. What is this? Extra piece? Extra piece, good. All right, so how does the tapered round work now? Now that I've made it. I'm going to select only part of my mesh. Move that out. Oh, ha! I merged into the wrong one. Wrong end. All right, so hide that, hide that. These two pieces need to be merged together. And I didn't actually Dynamesh. I merged into the right one, I just didn't Dynamesh. So I'm going to split. Make sure these are Dynamesh, so they're one piece, one geometry, not two separate geometry. And then it'll work properly. All right, so there's the end for the tapered round, and there's the key. Looks like this didn't actually merge. I may have not double checked the depth on this, but for the sake of this presentation, I'm just going to move it in. Just to there. Dynamesh. And now it should merge into one piece. And I can demo and move on. All right. So there you can see how a tapered round key would work. It's going to rest on top. So basically this is better for just a simple vertical key where the weight of the upper model is going to keep it in place. And once you have it in place, you should be able to just rotate this mesh all the way around and it just stay, keyed in place because of the key below it. So tapered rounds are pretty useful for that as well. I think you guys get the idea of how I'm working with these brushes. Well, let's move on to the next one. we've got the tapered square. Tapered square works pretty much exactly like the tapered round does, so I don't want to really demonstrate the whole process again. Does anyone have any questions about it? Let's see. Okay, we got a talk going on in Twitch about different materials. Looks like matte cap, red wax, indie adventures. I'm not really sure what that is. But tapered square, I drew it out the same as the other one. I'm going to split unmasked points. I'll auto group split, and I've got the outer component and the inner component. You can tell because it's actually changing the scale. One piece is the inside, the other piece is the outside. The inside one you want to make sure to put merge with the proper mesh. So I'll merge down, Dynamesh that. Oh, and I did the same thing. I want to check my brush depth first, so I'm going to actually undo all that. So when you draw these out, make sure that your brush depth that you see under brush and depth is set so that your mesh actually is interpenetrating a bit. When you're doing 3D printing, there can't be any gaps. So that mesh has to be going through a little bit. So if I split unmasked points and if I do transparency, you should be able to see that it's buried into the other mesh. That's important for this to work properly. Auto groups, group split. There's the internal one, and I'll merge that down onto there. Dynamesh it. So there's one side with a tapered square. And then the other piece I'll use as a cutter out of the other end. With Booleans turned on, that should be visible for me. Let's see, why I did that? Oh, I did it the wrong direction. Of course I did. I'm just going to move it over. It's like a rule of demos and like online streaming. It's like things are bound to go wrong. Make sure these are lined up so that this keying actually works. And I clicked on something, not sure what, to turn them into a folder, I think. I just clicked on the down arrow next to it. That's all good. All right, so we're gonna then use this as a Boolean cutter so that we get it to cut out of the other side. So this is probably my most commonly used key. I use tapered squares all the damn time. And I'll show you how to make a tapered square. Just say if you don't want to buy my brush, you can make this because it's a very useful key. Because this is pretty much, 90% of my keying. I use a tapered square and then epoxy, and then make sure those two pieces fit together. All right, so I'll make Boolean Mesh here and append it in. And there's my Boolean Mesh. Pull that up. What is this? Extra. It's extra now. Cool. And same as the other stuff that I've been doing just to keep it all organized. I'll make sure that that's color matched. That side is color matched. And you can see how this would work. Simple tapered square key. You can use these anywhere over a model, and this is how I do 90% of my keying for the large-scale sculptures that I cut up into pieces. Tessos on YouTube saying new room, new day for live streaming. Indeed it is. It's a new setting for me. Still have a lot to set up, but I'm feeling good about it. Alright, I'll merge those two pieces down and we'll call this tapered square. I'm going to save this scene because I have a feeling ZBrush might crash in all this madness. ZBrush demo keying. Alright, so keep it running, keep it chugging. Let's move on to the next one. This time I want to make sure I have both pieces visible, so I'm keying in the right direction. That's the direction. And what's next on this brush? So the next in our brush is the tapered square Boolean. So I don't need two pieces for this. This is when you have one long piece and you want to cut between it. So what do I mean by that? Let's say I've got this piece and it's longer. I'm going to come over to my tapered square and let's see how this draws out. Whoa. I want to make sure when I scale this, I'm scaling from the right angle. There we go. So I'm going to have my tapered square selected and I'll just start drawing it out. You see this one, I've got it coming out from the side because I often use it from the side the most, not from the front. So you're going to basically draw it out. You're going to split unmasked points so it comes out on its own layer and then just move it in place however you want it. You can use the transparency setting to check how it's working and then you just use it as a Boolean cutter. There we go. And that's what it should look like. You're going to have a little seam, but these two pieces should be keyed in one go. No mess about having to dynamesh multiple pieces, duplicate, and keep track of things. Booleans are the way to go in ZBrush for articulation. Mordekainer saying new set with an overfed paradox in the background. Yes, he's all the way back there, little chubby. But chubby is cute. Alright, we're going to go to, now we've drawn this in. We see that it's there and it's set to Boolean Cutter. I'm going to just select my mesh and go to Boolean, make Boolean Mesh, and let's append that in. There it is. And there you can see it's done the work of adding the key to the right side and cutting it out of the other side. And the tolerances are baked in, so it's got some thickness to it. So it should be able to work for you. Alright, I will draw that tapered square out over here as well, so we get an idea of what that tool was that was used to make this. Alright, so there you go. That one is the tapered square. Cutter. Boolean. Looks like I labeled this one wrong, so I'm going to fix that too. It's not square, it's square. Alright, cool. That's that, that's that. Huh, did I? Yeah, I did. Of course I did. Hard to keep track when you're working in like this, but I will grab that color, put it onto there, fill object. Move it on over so I can keep demoing these different pieces. So the Booleans are designed to cut out of one piece. Some of these other keys are designed to put two separate objects together. Alright, so there's the tapered square. Next up is the hinge. So the hinge, the ball joint, it's kind of pointless to demonstrate them on cubes. It's not going to make any sense to you to demonstrate a hinge or a ball joint on a cube. These are designed for characters. So let's switch over to a different scene and I'll show you how to use the rest of this brush. Oh, I should mention the Gumroad where you can buy this keys and articulations Imm Brush. I shared the link earlier in the chat. I'll make sure to share that link again. It's available for $10 US, but there's also a deal. Sorry to not let you know about the deal for any of you that already bought it. But if you go type in ZBrush Live, all lowercase, one piece in the form when you add the purchase, you can get it at half off. At least the first 25 people can get it half off. So that code is ZBrush Live. So let me share that link with you, and then the code is ZBrush Live. Code to get the Gumroad half off for the first 25 buyers is ZBrush Live. And that is all lowercase, one piece. And I'll drop the link in the chat again so you guys are able to see it. And I'll add it into the YouTube as well. There we go. And in YouTube chat as well. There we go. So yeah, whoever used the first 25 to get it can get that half off for $5. And so I've demonstrated the snap-in pins, the tapered keys, and the booleans. So I've demonstrated this side. For the ball joint and the hinge joint, I'm going to demonstrate it on a character. So when you guys download this, you're going to get a zip file. That zip file is going to contain this model as an OBJ, so you can start playing around with your own articulation and anatomy sculpting stuff. This should help inform that. It is not anatomically perfect. It is a simplified accorché, so it's kind of your standard superhero buff dude, but stylized, stylized so you can understand really. What I was trying to focus on was trying to help myself identify the insertion points and the volumes, so that hopefully will be helpful to you. So let me demonstrate. So when you get it, you're going to get like a zip file like that. Double click on it. It's going to have these three things. So let's drag them out. Okay. So these three things are, one, just a simple image to describe what pieces come with it. Then you're going to have an Imm Brush, and then you're going to have an Accorché simplified. So that you can open in ZBrush is going to the tool, import, and then you can bring in the OBJ. Let's test that and make sure it works. And then the Imm Brush, I'll show you how to load that in as well. For the Imm Brush, you're going to go to Brush, Load Brush, click on the desktop, and there's the Imm Brush. When you load it in, it should appear in your brush palette just like this. And if you want to save it, drop that Imm Brush in your, let's see, let me see if I can find that. You want to drop it in your ZBrush folder for your startup. Like when you open ZBrush, it's always in there. Let me see, where is that? ZBrush 2019. So that is under C, Program Files, Pixelogic, ZBrush 2019, and under Startup. Z Startup, you want to drop your brush in there. So I think it's under Brush Presets. That's where you want to drop it if you want it to show up. Imm Keys Articulation. Actually, that's an older one. I'll drop the new one in there. Aim Keys Articulation. That's what it's called. I figure if Damien Canderel can do damn standard, I can do aim keys. So that's aim keys articulation Imm Brush. Feel free to rename it to whatever you want. Just call it key art or whatever you want. And there we go. So that should show up under there. The OBJ you can import just in your tool palette settings. Aim Accorché simplified. And fingers crossed this works. I did not test it. Sweet, it works. All right, and there's the OBJ of the Accorché model that I sculpted. So this should give you a little help in trying to understand how anatomy works and how to sculpt around with it. It's a poly meshed. It isn't Dynamesh, so you should probably Dynamesh it, because right now it's kind of pinched in a lot of places. So if you start sculpting on it, make sure to Dynamesh it. I believe the eyes and the base are separate. So if you click auto groups, yeah, you can see that the eyes can come off, and then the base can come off as well. So what I've done is set up a scene here with that écorché as it comes in. I've also then gone ahead and separated out the eyes and the base and dynameshed it and made the arms just kind of go from rest pose more to standard T pose. I found T pose is better for me for articulation purposes because when you're doing it like this, sometimes you're going to cut pieces out of your torso, and I don't want that. I want to make sure that it's out wide. Mike Morgan saying, dude, that's an amazing starting point figure. Thank you. Let's see. Oh, Motorcaner saying, not on Twitch. Hold on, I'll go type it in on Twitch. There. Code to get the Gumroad half off. First 25 buyers, ZBrush Live. There's the key link. All right, so what was I doing? Yes. No, I'm glad you like it. It's a figure that I've made a few years back, and I just use it as a base mesh to start a lot of things. So I figure it'll help you guys out as well. So how did I get from here to there? I basically just transposed. So if you want to see how I did that, I'll quickly show you. Kind of shittily show you. So I'm going to auto groups. I'm going to Control Shift click, so I just have that selected. Maybe I'll bring the eyes back into this mesh, but I want the base off. I'll delete the base, and I'm going to go to Dynamesh, Geometry Dynamesh, and just Dynamesh it. 128 resolution, you'll lose a lot of detail, so make sure your resolution is set higher. Platano saying, why don't I see the link on the chat room in YouTube? So I'm not really sure. I don't set up this ZBrush Live thing. Those are the Pixelogic guys are setting it up. So I just put the link in the YouTube comments. I'll ask them later when they post this to have it as the main comment under the link description in YouTube. But for now, just go into the comments and you can see me as Aiman Akhtar typing that link in, and then you can see the link. Okay, yeah, back to it. So I don't really care about the resolution of this. That's good enough. Whoa, someone's calling. Sorry about that, guys. I think I've got someone calling me on Facebook. I'm going to decline that. All right, back to it. All right, so the way I transpose, you go to your mask lasso, and then just use your pen to drag out a mask over the area you want to lasso. You can be as precise with this or not precise with this as you want. Just make sure that if you're doing it symmetrically, you're not unmasking pieces out of the other end. Unmask that. And that should be basically good enough. And then just Control tap a bunch so it softens that. And you can invert that mask, click on rotate, draw your transpose bar, and then just kind of transpose. Now if you want this to be a full T pose, you want to make it a bit higher, move it out a bit, and then drop that mask and then just kind of resculpt that bottom. Transpose isn't perfect, it gets you as far as it can, but ultimately it's all about the masks you use, and it's a sculpting application, damn it, just enjoy the sculpting. And then yeah, once you dynamesh it, once you smooth it out, once you sculpt it in place, you should have something that looks kind of like that. All right, so once you get to this point, now I can show you what the hinge joint does, what the ball joint does, and you can kind of see how you want to use them. And I'll show you on this big beefcake dude, and I'll show you on a skinny doll girl character, and that way you can have both. Sweet. Okay, got it. Okay, so if you guys are taking my Mold 3D class on ZBrush on Mold 3D Academy, you guys get this Imm Brush for free. I'm gonna actually give it to the administrators of Mold 3D to make sure that the students of that class get this brush for free. I'm literally just doing all of this on the fly, so I'm not like totally prepared, but yeah, I'm figuring this out as I go, guys. So if you want the brush for your keying and articulation, I'll show you how to use it, the rest of it in this stream. But it's $10, $5 if you get it right now with the code ZBrush Live. And if you're taking my Mold 3D Academy class, which is on mold3dacademy.com, under all classes, self-paced class, 3D printing for ZBrush artists, then you'll get this Imm Brush for free. I'm also going to try to update this class. I'm not sure when, but I'm going to update it with kind of a full new lesson plan. So yeah, just keep tabs on that. mold3dacademy.com, 3D printing for ZBrush artists. All right. Let's see. Getting distracted. Lots of things happening and popping off. David Nash was saying it should let me change the URL on YouTube if I'm the moderator. Like I said, I'm not the moderator. I see. YouTube doesn't allow links in chat. I'm not really sure how to share it with you guys on YouTube then. Just go to Gumroad and type in key art or key articulation, and it should pop up. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to use the rest of these keys. I've got the hinge joint, I've got a hinge limited, the ball joint, and basically a few different ways to do a ball joint and a few different ways to do a hinge joint. What time is it? 11:03. Got another hour left in the stream. So let's start with the hinge Boolean. So the way to work with the hinge Boolean is let's start with the knee. So I'll zoom into the knee. And I'll kind of just draw it out. If you hold shift, it'll snap in place. Or in theory, it will. Once you draw it out, you can move it in place. I'll kind of move it up just a bit. And I want to make sure that it's going all the way through my mesh. So if you need to adjust the scale, go ahead and do that after the fact. And you may also want to rotate this so that it is lined up with the direction of your foot a bit better. So just rotated it slightly. Let's see what it's doing. So I'm going to split unmask points. David Rash is saying, so the plan to defeat you is to attract you to YouTube where you have no power. It's my kryptonite. Indeed. All right, so there we go. I just set that to be a Boolean cutter, and there's the hinge joint. You can see it's a bit wonky. We can move it around and change the scale to make it work a bit better. Let's move it. Wrong thing to move. I want to move the hinge joint. There you go. I'll move that forward a bit. And you can see how it works. Like I said, articulation is destructive by nature. So you want to make sure you are placing these things properly. Otherwise, it's going to just create a big old mess. And none of these brushes are going to work perfectly. In articulation, you're going to need to come in and hand sculpt a bit. All right, here we go. So there's the key for the hinge. This guy's a bit of a beefcake, so it's hard to make it work perfectly, but you're basically going to use that as your starting point and then fix things. How far up this cut goes determines the range of motion. So let me go ahead and do a, I'm just going to do one leg at a time, just so it doesn't give me too many pieces to work with. You delete that. So there we go. There's the one side, and I'm going to click on my crochet model, and I'll say Make Boolean Mesh. think about it. It's going to think about it. Okay, so where'd it go? There it is. It's kind of popped it off onto its own layer. I think. Ah, there it is. Okay. So I'm just going to do it in this scene. You can auto groups and do a group split, and it'll pop these pieces off. And what are we working with? We're working with the upper piece, which is going to be basically the body, where we've got a pin, which you can print and then just slide into place. And then we've got the lower half. So what you can do now is go to your Dynamesh settings. Let's see, not 128 resolution. NXN21s on Twitch is asking, what's the link to purchase? Thank you for sharing that, Motorcana. Appreciate it. Let me make sure this resolution is high enough. It should be something like that in this scene. It's like 8900. Set it to like 1200. Make sure it's good. All right, there we go. You can also then come in and color fill object, and then you can just sculpt, fix that up right there, smooth that out at the edge. And I'm going to do this kind of with low poly settings just to kind of get through this demo. But when you do this, please try to make sure it's high poly enough that it's worth it. There's the pin going through, and there's the mesh up top. So I'll do the same thing with the mesh up top. I will Dynamesh it at like 1000 resolution, and then I can come in and start sculpt fixing. Let's do fill object. You will probably need to adjust your model after you use this brush anyway, and probably even more so after you print it out and test, because I highly recommend that step. Do not step the print prototyping phase, because once you print these things, depending on the scale you're printing it, it may not work. All right, there we go. Relatively clean looking. So now, let's see if it'll let me demo it. Move that to there. Move all of that to the center. You know what? I'm just going to click on that. Hopefully it'll be relatively correct, normal-wise. If you go to your rotate, you should be able to see it rotate. Like that. So in theory, that's how it should work. It's hard for me to get an exact rotation angle for this. But if the pin's working properly, it should stay in place there. And your range of motion will be as far up as you can go with that before interpenetration starts. So that's your range of motion. And your range of motion in the front will be stopped by this limiter in the front. So I go into a lot more detail of this stuff in my articulation class in Mul3D. And like I said, I'm going to update the lessons when I can get around to it. But all of this info is in my ZBrush class. So you can learn more about articulation. But that's how the hinge joint works, the Boolean. It's an excellent cutter. I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back. I just know it works. All right, let's do the next one. So we'll go from the Hinge Boolean to the Hinge Limited. So the Hinge Boolean you can use for knees. You can use it for hands or elbows. You can use it for a bunch of stuff. Let me demonstrate the Hinge Boolean on an elbow as well, just so you guys get the idea. Hinge Boolean. Draw that out. Move it back into place. adjust the scale, size, whatever you need. And you want to make sure you're doing it in the right direction as well. Like this way is the wrong direction because that's going to make my arm joint bend backwards. So what I want to do is draw it out when I draw it the other direction. Wow. Draw it out however it draws out and then rotate it into place. I'm going to move it, rotate it, get it into place, move it, rotate it, get it into place. And then you can split it, split unmasked points, and make that a cutter. And there you are. You've got articulated elbow. And like I said, keep moving these pieces around, keep scaling and adjusting based on your own model, and then resculpt. Do not rely on this brush to do everything for you. All right, David Nash is saying, do you have an example of a clockwork imbricated sculpt? Like, what's your craziest articulated toy? I've done some crazy articulation stuff, man, but I can't really show most of my projects since they're client projects. I can show you one since the client gave permission to share it online. So I'll show you this girl doll that I just did recently, one of my previous streams, kind of the finished version of it, so you can get an idea of that. So Hinge Boolean works on knees and elbows. I'm gonna hide it for now. Hide that for now too. Let's do the next stuff, which is the limited hinge. So basically the hinge is basically the same thing as the Hinge Boolean, but if you do all the work yourself. What do I mean by that? Let's come here and draw it out. I'll draw it out that way. I'll rotate it into place. And I'll move it into place back there. A little bit more, that should be good. And this really is for people that are a bit more advanced because you need to be able to learn how to cut and slice and key and all that jazz. So I'll split unmasked points there. Duplicate my crochet, so I'm not working on that. I'll do a auto groups. So you can see this is made up of the upper piece, the inner piece, and then the pin. So actually I want to rotate this all the way around. Like that. Because I generally work when I do these higher to lower, meaning thicker part up and then down. Alright, so something like that. Then you want to go to, I already did the auto group, so I want to do a group split. So there's the pin, there's the upper piece, and there's the lower piece. And what you're going to do is come into here, split hidden, Dynamesh that, so that becomes closed. Dynamesh that, that becomes closed. And you're going to work this bit by bit. Where's the arm? Here's the arm. Yeah, I'm going to need folders very soon to keep this scene organized. Alright, what am I doing? There we go, there's the body. Alright, so now I'm going to try to sculpt this into place with the key. So the key I'm basically using as like an engineering base for the rest of my sculpt. And I want to make sure that, you know, that pin slot is empty, that my musculature is on top of this, but it's not actually affecting the rotation on the inside. Like, that would suck. So you want to make sure that you can see all the way through your mesh here. I learned this workflow originally from Robert Vignon, who used to teach the Mold 3D Academy 3D printing class before me. And there we go. Just getting it. Get that tricep volume back. As you can see, it's quite a bit more sculpting than just using the Hinge Boolean, but it works. It's just a matter of getting in there and making sure that it's all done properly. Okay. So basically that piece is going to get attached onto there, and you can do this a lot finer than I'm doing it. I'm just doing it very roughly. You should be able to extend your sculpt all the way on top here along the sides, just not in the center. Merge down. And then this other piece is going to merge onto there. Same dealio. You want to merge it such that you're not actually interrupting the function of the wheel, I guess, on the inside. Merge down onto that. And let's see all these pieces. Wow. Okay. There. Solo that out. Only select the piece that you want. Sculpt up into it. And like I said, this is a bit more advanced because you're going to need to sculpt it by hand and make sure you understand why it's doing what it's doing. You also need to understand range of motion and how many pieces you want and what works the way it works and why. If you want that brachioradialis coming up and over. And so ultimately, you're going to have a hinge there when you're good and done, properly sculpting up all the pieces. And you can make as much of it visible or invisible as you want. But like I said, this one you need to actually know a little bit about what you're doing and why you're doing it. I just can't possibly show all of that in a demo. That's this short. Your range of motion is going to be determined by the gap here. So you actually want to probably... Oh, man. Yeah, there we go. For some reason, I cannot switch to my damn standard brush right now. You just keep switching back to move. That is a funky mess. I have a feeling my ZBrush is about to crash, but let's hope it doesn't. 007 Jurassic on YouTube is asking, why do you not use the Gizmo? I use it time to time. I'm just more comfortable with the transpose. So you may want to do something like this in order so you have more range of motion. And again, that's something that you'll learn over time how to use. I just included that hinge in there for you to be able to experiment. All right, so next up we've got the ball joint with cutter. This works the same way as the hinge joint I showed. It's kind of do-it-yourselfer. And then the ball joint Boolean, and then the ball joint Boolean cutter. So let me show you those. Let's see, did I draw that out already? I did not. Okay. All right, I'm just going to merge all these pieces down so I can organize my scene a bit better. All right, back to it. All right, Nuclear Dan's asking if I have damp standard on shift by accident. It's possible. Yeah, look like that. Damp standard is on shift. So how do I get smooth back on shift? Ah, there you go. Good guess, mate. Appreciate that. When you press a brush while holding shift, sometimes that'll become your new shift, and then you need to make sure your shift goes back to normal, to smooth. All right, so here's my articulated, unarticulated écorché. I'm going to go over to my ball joint, and I'll show you all of these. So I'll start with all the way at the end, the ball joint Boolean. You got to draw that out, move it into place. This took me a while to figure out. I spent like all of the last stream trying to figure out how to create this Boolean joint. And it's still not perfect because, like I said, articulation is destructive by nature. So it doesn't, there's no one-click solution for articulation. But I'm going to draw it out. I'll split unmasked points, and I'll use that as a cutter. And there you go. There's your Boolean cut shoulder. This one doesn't work as well for beefcake dudes. It works better for slightly smaller proportioned characters, but you can adjust it for your beefcake dudes. And in one cut, it'll give you the arm, it'll give you the body cutout with the snap-in pin on the inside. The pin for this arm you're going to need to create because this kind of creates 3 separate pieces. Let me show you. All right, so once you've got that in place, you can go to Boolean, make Boolean Mesh. It'll think about it and make it on its own layer. That looks like it. We'll do a auto groups and a group split. This is gonna be funky, I already know. But you can come in here, smooth all that down so it works a bit better. Dynameshing helps. Or you know what, I'm just gonna turn on the Sculptress Pro. That way I should be able to smooth just the area I want, right? Oh, it is working. I think just my brush is too small. You know what? I'm just going to Dynamesh. Turn off Sculptress Pro. And if your smooth doesn't work at any point or it just gives you too much shit, you can go to Lightbox under Brush. And if you go to Smooth, there is Smooth Stronger. And I use that all the time. Because that kind of ignores the mesh and just gives you it kind of ignores like how how many polys you have, and it'll still give you the functionality of smooth that you're used to. Alright, so I'm doing this really quickly, but this should give you guys an idea of how to work with this brush. Alright, so there's the internal component of the shoulder. Then we've got this ball joint here. And if we group that, it should be able to split onto its own separate piece. Maybe I didn't position it properly. But it should pretty much be split. So I'm just going to go to my shift controller. And this will work better on a less beefcakey model, like I said. So we'll try that shortly. There we go. Damn it. I'll split that. And we'll do a Dynamesh there. Make sure your resolution is set high enough. Got some wonky stuff because it's a very thick model. But there's the pin piece that fits in to there. Then we've got this guy, which if we Dynamesh him, why is it not Dynameshing? Some part invisible. There we go. Okay. Like I said, demo purposes, so I'm doing this relatively quickly to get you guys the idea of how the brush works. You can take a lot more time and do it right. The pin's getting filled in, but that's okay, because I'm going to come in and cut it out. There's the pin. You can see the pin gets cut into a few different pieces if you just do a Boolean just like straight through. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm just going to select it, select part of it. And move that in. And Dynamesh. There you go. Got a working pin. Bit wonky because of the speed I'm working here. There we go. But there's our pin. And we can duplicate that pin and use it as a cutter out of the arm. So that pin can be a cutter out of there. Dynamesh sub it. Merge down. There we go. And so now we've got the pin cut all the way through. And so there's your functioning ball joint now. That part goes onto there, and this part goes into the body. And now you can come in and actually resculpt the body a bit better to decide how you're going to limit the motion. And you can sculpt around it. So there you go. That's how the ball joint cutter works. And you can layer this along with the hinge joint, along with other pieces, and then you're going to be able to use it. All right, cool. How are we doing on time? 11:30, cool. I think I have time to finish showing you all the brush pieces. So that was the ball joint Boolean. The ball joint Boolean cutter here, I'll demonstrate on the other end, works in a similar way, but it does slightly less work for you. However, it's also much less destructive. So for a big beefcake character like this, you can use that, bring it in place. Decide where you want that cut to be. Split unmasked points. Set that to be Boolean Cutter. And check it out in transparency mode. Make sure that you're getting it to the right spot where the actual joint would be, so slightly higher. And then I'm going to do a make Boolean mesh. Just thinking about it. This one's a bit more of a complex operation. Looks like it did it already. Let's find where it put it. Ah, that's it right there. So we will do a auto groups. That should help split that off onto its own mesh and piece. And we'll do a group split. I think when I Dynamesh, it merged all of that side together. So I'm not even worried about that right now. I'm worried about this side. So here's the pin. So it gives you that pretty perfectly, better than the other one. It cuts the arm off and adds this snap-in pin there. So you can come in and just sculpt away. Let's see. Let me switch to the clip curve. That way I can clip some things. Make this a bit faster. Cleanup wise. Dynamesh that. And I'm doing this super fast again. You guys should take more time with this. But that's basically half of it. And what you want to do is come over to your select lasso, kind of grab that piece and make that its own separate thing. So probably best to just come in with another Boolean cutter piece and separate that off. And there you'll have your internal ball joint component and then your external ball joint component. Not going to take the time to fully sculpt all that stuff, but you guys get the idea based on the previous one I showed you. And then the body, it leaves you with kind of like that perfect space to cut into. And then same thing, you can smooth out on the outside. So articulation is destructive by its nature, but it just takes a few rounds of going at it, and then you can spend some time to get it right, and it'll get done. All right, so that's the ball joint Boolean and the ball joint Boolean cut, and then this one, the ball joint with cutter, that essentially works a similar way. It just wants you to do the work. Uh-oh, I drew it out funny. Draw it out, split unmasked points, rotate. Uh-oh, make sure I'm rotating the right piece. So you can choose which way that you guys want to do this, providing you with a few different options in this brush. But basically, this piece is going to get attached onto the body, and then this piece over here, let's auto group it, will be getting attached onto the arm. So imagine that's the bicep, basically. Or the other way around. Try really seeing what works for you. There's the cutter. So that piece actually fits into the body. And then there's your pin. So I'm giving you basically all the elements to start experimenting with your own articulation and then trying it out. Let's show it to you on a different model, and then I'm going to have to start signing off soon. Get to actual work. Let's see, I think I have the scene here. One of them. All right, here we go. So this is a model that I made with another modeler, Jake Kemper, helped me out with this a lot. This is for a client, Shannon Victoria. This is her style of character, 2D character. And then we basically sculpted it to match the appeal of her 2D drawings as a 3D character. And then we articulated it. So I can show you a bit of how we articulated it. And let me show you just how to do the ball joint and hinge joint on her, so you can see how it works on a slightly different character. So I'll go to the hinge joint first. Draw that in place. Rotate it around. Rotate it around. Move it in place. There we go. And that should be the other way. Okay, in theory that should work. I may scale it down just a smidge. And split that off, split unmasked points. That then becomes a cutter. Solo off. There we go. There's our hinge joint. Like I said, you can smooth this a bit better. You can adjust the scale a bit better, so that works better for you. But there's how you set up a hinge joint. And then the ball joint, same way. Let's do the ball joint Boolean. Move that in place. Rotate it around. Articulation is different than 3D modeling. You have to think a bit like an engineer. Most of the time with 3D modeling, we're thinking about the final output being a game or animation or even toys. but we don't think about it in engineering terms, and that's important when we're creating something that needs to move. Toys in general need more engineer because they need balance. Need to think about weight and distribution. All right, got that in place. I'm going to split unmasked points, and we use that as a cutter. And then adjust the rotation angle. And the scale. And the placement so that it's rotating from the right angle. Just like that. So that gives you basically the starting point for you to then articulate the character. Let me show you what we ended up doing for the finished character. Okay, that's opening up right now. There we go. So I tend to color my meshes green when they're ready to print, so I know that this is decimated, hollowed, ready to go. But I will turn the base on, and Z plugin subtool master fill color and material, just a white sculpty material, so we can see it all. All right. I could try this. Let's see what expose does. Expose tends to always overdo it. You can go under the transform menu and reduce the amount of expose. So we can see all the pieces that this is broken into. Let me unexpose it, and I'll do it a bit by hand so you can see what's going on. Hope you guys are enjoying this stream, and if you have any questions, you can email them to me at aimanaktar@gmail.com. Whoop, do that. But like I said, this is version 1 of the brush, so I'm not really sure how well it works and for every scenario. However, you can help me figure that out. So if you have any feedback on that brush, please do let me know. Whoop, here we go. So you can see with this one, I actually popped the head off up at the top so we could have the eyes go inside the model's head. Cool. And for these ball joints for the shoulder, I tried something unique, which is I tried to have hooks at the end and have them run through the model. So basically, crud. Pressed expose again there. So I basically made a hole all the way through the body and did a rubber band insert on the inside to hook into the outer edges of the ball joint. I ended up actually not using that and just putting the rubber band right through the shoulder and then keeping it in place with the pin, and that worked really well. This down here, you can see the hip T-joint coming through on the inside of the mesh here under the pelvis. Ended up doing something really complex there too, where I ran a rubber band through the inside of the body up into the torso and then connected it to the shoulder rubber band, and that way it was all able to stay in place. So there's the articulation, kind of a finished piece. You can see I've got your standard hinge joints for the knee and then for the elbow. Those are hinge joints. I've got ball joints for the shoulders. The hips are their own thing. They're not really a ball joint. It's kind of called a T-joint. And snap-in pins for everything else. So snap-in pin, free rotation for the feet, for the hands, as well as for the neck. So hopefully this articulation brush helps you guys experiment a little and then get into this stuff. There really aren't that many articulation classes. The back bend, someone's asking on Twitch, is the same way. The rubber band is going up through the body from the pelvis and attaching to a hook I made up here in the top of the body. I ended up not using this and just drilling through the top and attaching to the rubber band up in the middle. Just that was more secure. And I can show you some photos of that so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. So here's the articulated finished model printed in clear resin. You can see how it can pose. the dirty dancing pose, or I don't know, matrix pose, whatever you want to call this. But yeah, articulation for print. It's you know basically that it's going to work. Here's a model that we printed unarticulated as well that you may use for molding, casting. And I'm looking forward to seeing it all painted up and then finished and dressed up and whatever she does with it. So yeah, I'm hoping this was useful for you guys to see the articulation brush and how it works. Like I said, it is up on Gumroad, so you can purchase it and then try using it. First 25 users get it half off with the code ZBrush Live. And I can share the link again. And if you join my Mold 3D Academy class on 3D printing, I go over a lot more in about articulation, talking about He-Man and G.I. Joe toys that I grew up with, Barbies, and how they have a limited range of motion because you want beauty versus some other toys like the SFBT and TOA. It's all about articulation. So they've got like 100+ points of articulation. I talk about clothed characters, art toys, and then open source action figures that you can purchase online. And articulated toys not having to look like anything else. So Modibot is a great example on Shapeways. So yeah, we can keep talking about articulation forever, but I hope this Imm Brush is a good start for you to help you on your journey to learn about articulation. You make sure that I have that link. So once again, that's on Gumroad. It's just called Key Art or Keys Art. Keys and Articulation Imm. There it is. Just looking for all that jazz. Okay. Once again, thank you for joining me for this stream. My name is Aiman Akhtar. If you want to follow more streams, they will be on pixelogic.com, ZBrush Live, author Aiman Akhtar, and you can see all of my previous streams. There's like 5 pages of like almost 50 streams now. I'm probably going to take a break through August and not stream just so I can catch up on my Fungusaurus project work. Once again, that is my own IP that I'm developing. And you can follow that on fungusaurs.com. These cute little creatures. And the story surrounding their creation and proliferation and all that. And you can follow us on Instagram at Fungusaurs. Alright, just to make sure you all have the link, I'll go ahead and post and share it again. find where I wrote it before. I believe it's on the YouTube channel. All right, cool. Paste it in there, paste it on Twitch, and on Restream Chat as well. And let me go back to Gumroad and make sure that it's actually working as far as downloads go. Let's see, products. Gumroad does not want to open up for me. Seems to be quite busy. All right, cool. It's working. Looks like we've got 12 sales so far already. Sweet. Thank you guys for your support. I appreciate that. Yeah, I hope this is useful, and I hope if you guys want a refresher on this lesson, you can check it out on the ZBrush Live Presenters page. And once again, if you want to get a more in-depth lesson, you can go to mold3dacademy.com. Go to the All Classes Self-Paced class, 3D Printing for ZBrush Artists, and then you can learn all sorts of stuff there. You can see the lesson plan, and it's all mostly free software except for ZBrush. That you'll need. All right, guys and gals, thank you for joining. Got to get back to work, so I'm going to hit it, and I will see you all next time I stream. And if not before the summit, I'll see you at the ZBrush Summit. All right, guys. Cheers.